his prediction was that we're going to have true AGI by 2026, where we have a general intelligence that is uh, at least as capable of any human on Earth. That it should be able to do whatever you ask it to do.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Welcome to the Automated Lawyer Podcast. I am one of your hosts, John Fritz. And today, as in every day, I'm joined with my co-host, Dan Schnurbush. Dan, what's going on this week?
Oh, John, it's a lot going on this week, and we're going to dive into it a little bit. But the biggest thing for me right now is the kids have been off school for parent-teacher conferences Thursday and Friday. So my house is a little bit of a madhouse. So if you and I work from home primarily. So if you hear any hooting and hollering and screaming or blood-curdling, murder sounds, it is probably not murder occurring in my house, but I can make no affirmances one way or the other. How about yourself? What's going on?
It's Friday. We usually shoot on Fridays, so it's a nice sunny day here in St. Louis. I got no complaints. I love Fridays. My team goes, my virtual team, that's all over the U.S. and the world, goes home at 12 o'clock Central on Fridays. So we have a very short day. We go over KPIs, for the team. We go over wins and that sort of stuff, and then I'm done for the day, and I go home and eat lunch, and I kind of start working on stuff at home. So,
Nice.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I know we got a big old list today of stuff that we kind of want to chop up a little bit today. So, what are your thoughts on our first topic?
Yeah. So John and I were chatting. I thought maybe we'd mix things up a little bit this week, and I wanted to kind of go through some hot news and a little bit of a news roundup in AI and technology, and with a focus on the legal space to some extent, and just kind of get some. John has not seen this list, so these are going to be live hot takes on what's going on, and I thought it might be kind of fun. So the first thing I wanted to mention is there's this guy I've been following on TikTok. His name is Nate B. Jones. He's a former product manager for, I don't remember, but he's been in the tech and programming space for a while. And he runs a fascinating TikTok channel where he's giving daily kind of breakdowns at a very high level of thought on the state of AI, who's developing what, why are they doing it, what does this mean for these different companies, what should we expect? And he's just giving these really high level, very interesting takes on a lot of this stuff. So I wanted to throw his name out there just for recognition. Anybody who's at all interested in AI stuff and who is on TikTok or is willing to brave the treacherous waters of TikTok, assuming it doesn't get shut down, check him out, give him a follow. Great stuff. But he had opened my eyes to a couple of interesting things this week, and one of them is a really fun thing. This actually came from the OpenAI CEO, where he posted on Twitter a popular prompt that's been going around for among his team, and that he's recommending people do it. And this only works if you have the paid pro version of ChatGPT, right? And that you have memory turned on. So if those two things are true, if you go into your settings on ChatGPT on your pro account and you make sure that the memory beta feature is turned on, it remembers a lot of stuff that you talk about with it. And occasionally, if you'll see that little mark in your chat thing that says memory added or something like that, it'll take, and you can tell it to remember things too. But if you have memory on and it's been remembering stuff, he said, you need to try this prompt. It says, you log into ChatGPT, a fresh conversation, you've never talked about anything before, and you say, what do you know about me that I might not know about myself? And it's so interesting. Do you have memory turned on, John?
I'm assuming I do, because I was going through and entering. I was doing training when I started out because I didn't really know what I was doing, but I was training in the actual prompt box, right? And then I went in the next day and I was like, why is Eleanor not remembering any of the stuff, right? And then I went and I figured that out, that memory setting. But now I'm obviously training from that very beginning point, training in the actual command prompt section, right, where I'm actually entering commands through there, and then it's hard wiring or it's hard coding in the commands in there so that it goes through all future responses, right? As opposed
Um,
to that.
yeah. Yeah, and the memory feature is more for it seems to be more for personal uses, but it's really interesting because 'cause it'll just tidbits. You can say like, "Hey, remember this about me," or it will just dynamically, if you say something interesting, "Oh, I've been struggling with this lately." If you have memory turned on, you'll see a little marker that says, "Added this to memory," and you can delete stuff if you don't want it to remember. But
Yeah.
it's really, really interesting the types of things that it remembers and how it phrases them. And then when you ask that prompt, "What do you know about me that I might not know about myself?" You
Well,
get really, really well, for me at least, because I've had memory on since it came out. It gives really, really interesting and insightful, um,
I'm gonna do it right
perspective,
now.
uh, about yourself, which is there's people all over social media who've been talking about how, "Oh, it brought me to tears. I've never heard anybody say something so nice about me." Like, it's really, really interesting.
Do you want to hear Eleanor's response to that
Yeah,
prompt?
yeah, do it.
He says, "I do not have access to personal information about you unless you have provided it through the documents you've uploaded through our conversations. My responses are strictly based on the information provided in these documents. If you'd like
There
to
you
discuss specific aspects about a probate case or any legal matters based on the documents you've shared, feel free to let me know. Otherwise, I do not hold any personal knowledge about you beyond that." So
there
that's
you
the perfect actually response because that's what I've trained her to say. Do not give me anything unless it is in my very, very specific database.
Yeah, there you go. No, that's exactly the right response for that kind of bot. And that's something I think we're gonna see, a lot of over the next, like I don't know how long this phase is gonna last, but it'll probably be like, if I had to guess, 6 months to a year, maybe 2 years, where we're gonna start seeing a lot more, like, specialized AI. Like, a lot of people log into ChatGPT, they ask some questions where but I think we're gonna start seeing a period of much more specialized things where we have an AI assistant that handles this task, or it knows how to deal with this kind of thing because we can craft a prompt or we can give it enough context. But to give like one AI all the context we need and have it actually be good at everything and recall everything correctly and follow complicated steps correctly, I don't know if we're quite there yet. Um,
Just
so
think about all of the data points that a human, right, a lawyer or anybody that all the amount of data that you produce each day, right? Just your, physical actions, verbal actions, right?
mm,
The way you operate when it comes to handling a certain task or workflow, or I mean,
mm,
there probably, I mean, there's obviously everybody has a very, very specific pattern set of how they operate, right? That's who they are, right?
mm,
And, I think that at some point, I think you're right. I think that AI will play a bigger role of digesting the data that we output each day in some form or fashion, and then using it for predictability, right?
yeah,
When it comes to predicting what the next step is, like, hey, I'm in this workflow, and then it's already saying, well, it's already predicting, like, hey, I already know this next task. We've done this before. Like, based upon your prior data set points, this is what the next task is. And so, I think the learningness of like, you go teaching in a workflow when you're, and let's just say in a probate case, you're entering a workflow and you have a bot in the background monitoring your actions, right? And then instead of having to go through and teach it, or like going through your case management system and saying, "Hey, this is task A, this is task B, this is task C," right? You have this bot in the background that's just monitoring your systems and goes, "Okay, I know what the next task is. It's this. You forgot to do this. Did you do this yet?" As opposed to, having to,
yeah,
manually create task flows, right? Automatically doing task flows based upon actions.
yeah. How nice would it be if you had an AI that had that level of integration with your workflows that knew when you were forgetting to do something, like, hey, John, that brief you were supposed to file, or that pleading you were supposed to send out? Like, I know that that's part of the workflow, and I haven't seen that go out yet. Like, that would
I don't
be.
think we're that far out on that, to be honest with you. I
I
mean,
don't think so either.
just think about, let's say let's use Filevine for example, right? I know they're doing. There's a lot of AI incorporation. Of course, they're going to charge you for that, as an add-on to everything, right? Because everything is an add-on these days. But any of these case management systems, I mean, a lot of them will track time. I mean, generically just track time, right? I mean, like you don't need to enter time in systems because it'll track each case on how much time you spend on each case. Like that's a very simplified version of what we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
And so just take it the next step level of just simply monitoring your actual what you're doing on your computer, right? And then you're opening up a template, you're doing this, you're sending an email, you're this and that, right? And then using that to not just tell you what the next steps are, but take it to the next level of actually doing those next
Yeah.
steps, right? Is this the proper workflow I need to be going? Please confirm. Yes. Okay. And then it automates the workflow
Yeah.
based upon past actions.
Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of the hot buzz right now is these agentic workflows, they're calling them, where we're kind of and OpenAI recently, I think it was last week, another point of news, I guess, released what they're calling their Swarm API, which is kind of a terrifying name for it. But what it is it's an application programming interface or an API for creating mass agent workflows where you can like trigger a whole bunch of different AI bots to kind of dynamically be generated to project manage and problem solve a particular given task. And it's unclear yet to me exactly how this is going to be completely used. I'm really interested to see what people can do with it. But they're getting ready to launch this Swarm API, and they're talking about it as kind of like the segue into or the next roadblock or stepping stone toward our true AGI or artificial general intelligence. And what's his name? Dario Amodei is the founder of Anthropic. I think Anthropic is OpenAI's like biggest competitor. They created the Claude model, which if you haven't tried it, you should check it out. It's really really cool. Very similar to ChatGPT, but he wrote a really long blog post earlier this week where he said he was just kind of making the optimistic case for AI and oh, it's going to have all these benefits in health and medicine and science and on and on and on. And his prediction was that we're going to have true AGI by 2026, where we have a general intelligence that is at least as capable of any human on Earth. That it should be able to do whatever you ask it to do at a super high level. 2026. So what is that? A little over a year from now. I don't know. That seems like a pretty hasty timeline, but the pace of growth we've seen or change that we've seen is pretty shocking. What do you think?
I agree that that things are moving at a really fast pace. Here's kind of my hesitation or my observation when it comes to the actual application of the tools, right? I mean, let's think about case management softwares for the legal space, right? We have all these case management softwares that all have good parts and bad parts, right? And case management softwares have been around forever. I mean, and we're talking, so here's my kind of thing is that I think that the AGI or any sort of artificial intelligence piece, I think that it has to be one fully customizable for your particular needs, right? Because anything generalized is going to work. It's going to be cool, but is it going to actually fundamentally change your particular use case, right?
Yeah.
Your particular business. And I think that
Yeah.
the answer is um, yes, to a very limited extent, unless it's fully customizable, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what we're seeing now. I mean, look at any of the CRMs we use, right? I mean, you're building your own for your custom use case, right? So I think there's going to be a lot of outside the box uses that people are going to try to basically sell as products, right?
Yeah.
Here's this, here's that, and that's kind of what's happening now. For document review, doc generation, any sort of legal use where legal research and writing. But when it comes down to your particular use case, I think that it has to be customizable, and you have to actually customize it yourself for your particular use.
Yeah. Yeah. And your sentiments, I think, are spot on, and they're very reminiscent of coming back to Nate Jones again. He's the one that kind of tipped me onto this blog post, and his reaction was, well, maybe, but let's be a little more responsible about our predictions, because Nate's point was, you can create these like beautiful pie in the sky utopian kind of descriptions, but nobody's giving any explanation of the how. Like, okay, so you've created this general intelligence, but like we have, 350 million general intelligences walking around the country right now. That doesn't necessarily mean that the problem is instantly solved. You know what I mean? because
Yeah.
we each have specific knowledge. And this was a really interesting observation I thought that he made, and it was something that occurred to me as well. Is that even with a smart intelligence, there are like knowledge limitations. Even though it knows everything, it still doesn't know everything. Like it's a very Hayekian point, or Friedrich Hayek, the economist, that there are limits of knowledge. Like there are limits on what a centralized system can know. Like it can't. Unless you fine tune and train it on your specific workplace, on your specific county or municipality or city or state, the workflows in what is it in front of this judge, or what how do we handle things at our firm, like a even a super smart AI trained on every piece of publicly available data probably doesn't have access to very much of that data. And so until it's been fine tuned, it's how is it actually going to solve and make everything utopian? It's hard to, it may be hard for people to articulate that. So it's going to be an interesting period where we kind of learn to integrate and live with bots.
And that's what I think the big disconnect is and will be for the foreseeable future is the ability for AI to be functional and actually take meaningful actions that are that makes sense, right? I mean, how are you? I mean, like I said before, it's you can have, like you said, you can have all the knowledge in the world, but can it take this very specific action at this time and be consistent about it, right? And know that that's the action it's supposed to take. And maybe there's a certain circumstance where it needs to audible, right? In this particular circumstance. So there's a lot of, I mean, the nuances are unbelievable. And that's why we have experts and people in every single field, right? I mean, people who are experts because it's so nuanced, right? And the technology in that space is constantly evolving and changing, which creates new knowledge, right? New resources to absorb. So it's, yeah, I mean, it's really fun and it's cool to play with. But I think, like I said, it's that's where how do you use AI right now in your law firm from a functionality perspective? What is it doing to actually
Yeah.
move the needle for your firm?
Yeah.
And how are you using it, right? Because I
Yeah.
mean, and and that's kind of that's how I see everything now when it comes to technology and everything is what is my ultimate goal? One is to grow the number one law firm, probate law firm in Missouri, right? That is my number one goal. And then everything else is secondary to that. So how am I using AI to go towards that goal, right? Either
Yeah.
scalability or profitability is kind of something we had talked about before, right? So
Yeah. Yeah. And that's yeah. And I can speak for our firm at least. Like, from an AI standpoint, it's I trust it in like administrative functions. Like I think that's where right now it's adding like the most value. So like the classic example I give is that like all of our inbound mail is scanned by Earth class mail. There are a virtual mail receiving facility. And then all that mail is automatically OCR scanned by Earth class mail. So then when those uh, PDF scans come in through their API to our system, all that text data can be passed through ChatGPT or another language model through the API and be like, hey, here's the document. Can you tell me, what cases this belong to? What do we need to do with it? Who should it be assigned to? That kind of information. And then it can automatically match stuff to our. Okay, so it's very, very good at those things. Anything beyond that, like that requires higher order, like legal thinking. I usually use it more as a thought booster or a thought helper. Like if I'm like having trouble thinking through a problem where I need to like look at it from a different angle or something, I'm like, hey, here's the problem I'm dealing with. Can you give me some ideas, help structure my thinking, get it out on paper for me? That kind of stuff is very helpful. And I saw Spellbook AI. I'm sure you guys get the ads for these on Facebook. The contract review AI platform.
oh yeah.
I have not used it because I don't really do any contract work. But they're now advertising that they've integrated the O1 preview model, so it can
It's a
add.
very cool model, by the way. I've been playing with that a lot. It's very
Yeah,
cool.
it's very cool. Like advanced reasoning now, or you could presumably, I'm just imagining, you could presumably say like, hey, within the context of this whole contract, what is the best way to structure this particular provision? And my bet is, under the current model, it should be able to reason through, oh, based on the type of contract, based on the context you've given me, I think this provision needs to be changed in this way. Like, we're there, fam. It's pretty wild. So I'd be interested to hear people's experiences with Spellbook or any other AI tools they're using right now.
And so, I mean, I know you're talking about functionality, and like I think those are great use cases, right? You're taking a human element and replacing it with a Zapier Chat GPT combination, right? That's taking out the human element, which is going towards, I would say, scalability or profitability, right? If you want to add more cases, that gives you more time to work on cases.
Mhm.
If you want to just simply reduce the amount of human overhead, right, in that particular case, right, goes towards profitability. So a great use case. I think that, and I'm always in almost everything I do, I try to push the envelope as far as I can push it to see what it can do, right? And so specifically, that's what Eleanor I'm trying to do is actually do complex legal reasoning, right? And actually do that from a trading model to see how far I can push
Mhm.
her to basically provide information. And it's incredible. I mean, the training, there's a lot of training, but it's incredible when it comes to, I mean, and I'll tell you our functionality use case, because at first it was like, "This is just cool. I'm gonna just see how far I can, what I can, teach it to, teach her to do and respond," right? And now I have a very specific use case. We talked about this before, but, when new leads come in, right? We're moving away from we're moving towards signing up clients without having a consultation with the attorney, okay? Signing them up, and then they get access to the attorney after that, right? Because we're getting too many tire kickers, people who are
Um,
want free legal advice, and then they have no once they get the milk from the cow, they have no reason to sign up. It might take them 3 or 4 months. They know that, "Oh, no, I'm good. Hey, I got until 1 year, I know my process, I'll kinda just skate now." And then you're chasing them, right? So, we're doing a complete revamp of our intake process on how we work with clients when it comes to the initial consultation stuff. But
yeah.
my point is that now I have a team member my intake specialist who can bring in the data, right? Enter it into Eleanor, and then Eleanor will give the recommendation about so that the client knows, this is a small estate. This is what it costs. This is how long it takes. Here's some kind of venue specific nuances. And she's able to produce that through a simple prompt of what are the assets, who are the heirs, date of death, is there a will, and I think there's yeah, and then, that's it. So,
Yeah.
she's able to give me this information in a very structured it's the same every single time, right? So, but we're using it as an actual guide and assistant for our intake people to be able to, provide just a general not legal advice, right? Because 'Cause they're not a lawyer, but simply saying, "This is likely gonna be a small estate affidavit. Here's what it costs. Here's how long it takes.
Yeah.
Um, here are the next steps to sign up," right? You sign up, and then you get access to John, who's gonna walk you through the process, and then we're gonna handle it for you in a extremely fast and simple, easy way.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm finishing up a big project right now. That once I'm done with it, yeah, that's going to be one of my next focuses is seeing what we can do in terms of pushing the boundaries on, like you said, in probate, a lot of tire kickers, a lot of people that, even if they're not a tire kicker, they just need information or they don't know what they need to do. Like, oh, I've got dad left a $5,000, 2004 Chevy, and how do I get this? And I can't tell you how many calls I've had where it's like, well, did you pay the funeral bill? Yeah, it was $8,000. Well, you just go file a creditor refusal letter. Um, being able to help weed those out. And I've been looking at AI solutions, both voice and chatbot based, to integrate those chat assistants into like our website. So if somebody has a question and they're on the website, being able to get that addressed and weeded out before they end up taking up a calendar slot, or or through the voice model as well, and seeing where that goes now that we have the real time API. So that's going to be a big project of mine coming up pretty soon. Pretty excited about that.
I love the project, but here's my pushback though on giving that knowledge base. I'm building Eleanor this massive, super accurate knowledge base, right? Bot, right? So it's taking me a lot of time. If I were to release that externally, right? and let's say I put it on my website, right? And you can ask Eleanor questions about probate, and she's going to tell you exactly what you need to do and whatnot. Then where's the incentive for them to actually call your firm and sign up with you and actually, and have you give them value, right? If you're giving all the value away, now they need a lawyer to file the documents and all this, but they might go, "Hey, I'm gonna try to file these documents myself because this really smart bot just told me what to do," right?
Well,
Um, in some cases, yes, that is the point, right? But I'm talking about more of when it comes to, you know, not having clients, 'cause we have a problem with clients sometimes too. They'll call in, we give them a great initial free consultation, right? And it takes them 8 months. They wait till the last minute before the 1-year mark to try to get letters of administration, right? And so it's like, I guess it's a fine balance between, helping people who that would not be a client, just for free, and, like, that's a great thing, obviously, like your creditors' refusals and stuff like that, that fall outside of it. But you also don't want people to be able to just get,
yeah. Yeah, it's
get enough
mostly
information to not do anything, and then
yeah.
then they cause themselves problems, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So my thought on it is I'm planning to use the structure mostly as a lead screening tool to get, screen
Yeah,
out bad cases before they clog up the calendar.
that makes
Um,
sense.
but, you know, and limit well, you've also got to be careful about giving any kind of advice, but in those kind of
Sure.
obvious cases where it's like a creditor refusal, for example, is because in St. Louis County, many counties, like a creditor refusal is the only thing you can file without an attorney anyway. So the risk for that, I'm not as worried about it, just because as long as the bot is reminding them that like, hey, you can't, you're probably going to have to do a full administration. You can't do this without an attorney. You're going to have to schedule an appointment. They're probably lured into my web, so to speak. Anyway,
Yeah.
but yeah, it could be an issue, particularly in other jurisdictions where there is more possibility of pro se representation. You definitely got to be mindful of how the bot is talking to people. And one of the things that I did in an early draft of when I was working on months ago is just making sure that I included a directive in it where I was like, the focus of your conversation should generally be around getting a consultation booked unless they are obviously not a good case. So like,
Yeah.
it tries to err on the side of, let's get them in, get them booked, not give away the goose, so to speak. But
And you also, you gotta be really careful, and even I'm careful now when our, Eleanor's internal only, right? And part of my training is literally just asking questions and then monitoring outputs, right? So, I think that, that's why I think we're light. I think we're a long ways away from, client facing stuff, right? Because if she gives the wrong response, somebody, says, "Oh, well, I got the bot told me on their website," right? Even though we say this is not legal advice, right? Type stuff. So you got to just always be protecting yourself from that perspective about being super careful about, the information provided, and
mhm,
making sure that your bot doesn't provide the wrong information or provide legal advice
yeah,
that could be or advice that could be construed as legal advice, and then
yeah,
you get in trouble down the road, right?
yeah.
And you don't even know what's happening.
Yeah, no, that's true. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's a totally reasonable point. Like, there's so much more to talk about on this because, like, the Missouri bar just gave a ethics opinion a couple of months ago. All that's only relevant to Missouri, so may skip over it. But yeah, watching out for those are you on the hook kind of things. And one of the things that I've done so far in the system prompt for these models is basically saying, look, do not give any kind of legal advice. This is important. Bold, underscore, capitalize. And the funny thing is, like, if you actually
Does
do
it
things like
know?
that, if you actually do things like that, where you say this is important, like it will actually increase its probability of remembering those instructions. But it has done a pretty good job so far. I haven't like mass market tested it to see, like how, if 1,000 people are asking questions, how often is it going to mess up?
Yeah.
But the other thing too is the new O1 preview model, which is the actual full O1 model is launching soon, which is way more powerful than the O1 preview, which is hard to imagine, but it's way more powerful. It already exists. And the way that it thinks, we talked about it before, how it has to think through the response to a prompt before it gives it.
Yeah.
Because of its thinking process, it is apparently dramatically better at following detailed system constraints because it will methodically think through its system prompt and its like constraints and requirements before providing an output. Um, and as a result, at least in their internal reporting, they've said that it's way more reliable in terms of following guardrails and stuff like that. So that I think is going to be very helpful for us as lawyers.
Yeah. Well, and again, I think there has to be. I mean, if I ever had any sort of client-facing chatbot, that wasn't. I mean, I have a chatbot on my website now, but it follows the same, the same script, right? It's like an either or, right? Or it follows a very specific. The responses are not. There's no intelligence involved in these responses. It's a if then, right? Or here's it's a very simple script, right? But I would say if you're thinking about using a bot for your website that has it's AI driven, just one, I would probably only personally use a custom GPT that's connected that you're actually putting the information in,
Mm,
and that way you can control the narrative, you control the scripts. Worst case scenario, it doesn't know the answer, or it just best case scenario, it provides only the very limited information that you're willing to provide at that point, right?
yeah,
I think that's important.
yeah. Um, so on this, like, I mean, if this is reasonable that we're going to be seeing like true, I mean, you could argue that some of these bots are already way more intelligent than your average person, but like if we're within a relatively short period of true AGI, um, and the impacts that it's likely to have on a lot of different fields, but I think it's going to have a perhaps disproportionate impact on knowledge professions like law. Um, what is this going to mean for compensation models? Because like so many attorneys are running with a billable hour style model, and I thought it was interesting that it was actually the Missouri bar in their ethics opinion in April raised this question. They they didn't give any exposition on it, which I actually kind of appreciate, but they raised in one sentence. They were like, attorneys need to evaluate the effect on the reasonableness of legal fees in light of the use of AI, which I thought raised an interesting question. Like, what is this? What is this? What does AI mean for, is the billable hour dead, or will it be dead soon? Um, does it mean that we all need to start? Are we going to be all unethical if we don't start lowering fees?
No.
What's your take on this?
You know, uh, I was in a very similar situation when I was starting my own firm, right, 6 years ago. I wanted to build kind of a hybrid fee model of hourly rate and, contingency fee and, um, flat fee, right? Um, and so that's kind of what I did, and I think that the more technology I introduced into the systems, especially with doc automation, right? I started building out these massive outputs for pretty much everything I was doing at the time through Gavel. It used to be Documate, right? And so I very quickly understood like, hey, you can't if you're charging an hourly rate, it's how long it actually takes you to complete a task is what you're charging the client, right? So I think for scalability, profitability, for especially when you're introducing technology, I mean, you're basically, I mean, it's not a value-based service, but it's basically, I mean, we move into flat rates, right? So we do, there's a very small amount of our firm that does hourly billing, but it's basically, it's a hybrid fee that we use. So it's a flat rate plus an hourly rate in if these certain circumstances apply, right? And they don't apply in every case, only when cases start to go off the rails, right? And we're spending 3, 4, 5 hours going down a rabbit hole that's atypical for a case, right?
Hmm.
Then the hourly rate applies. But we've built in that, that base rate, and then the hourly rate is only for the stuff that how long it takes. So, when you build out automation and let's talk about lowering fees, right? Something you mentioned to be lower fees, but I spent a year and a half building out those automation platforms, right? I don't know how many hundreds of hours built into those building those out when they were in their kind of infancy stages, and now they're much more advanced to where they are now when it comes to being able to build faster and quicker. But
Hmm.
um, so I think that anybody who's constantly putting automation and tools into their practice, they need to seriously reconsider the hourly rate fee, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you can't still protect yourself. Because I mean, what happens in a lot of these cases is you sign, let's just say you're a pure flat fee case, right? Oh, it's going to cost you $5,000 to do this case, right? The case takes a turn, becomes contested. There's 35 errors. You're chasing people. You're on the phone, for every single week, calling people about some sort of claims issue or this or that. Total unforeseen stuff. You can actually lose money on those cases if you don't protect yourself. So that's why we have a hybrid fee. But I think that the pure hourly rate, it works when when humans are incentivized to be as slow as possible,
Yeah.
right? I
Yeah.
mean, literally, like I'm gonna take my time. I'm gonna get it done right because I'm incentivized to spend more time on this case the way my billing structure is, right?
Yeah.
Whereas a flat fee, it doesn't matter if it takes you 1 minute or 100 minutes, or 100 hours, right? That's what you get paid for that piece. And I think actually people, at least I've understood it, my clients, and I don't know, I think you're probably very similar, but they love being told, "This is what it's gonna cost." This is what the cost is gonna be. Now, there may be a little bit of flexibility in that what that top end is because of extra work, but this is where your range is, as opposed to going, "Hey, it's gonna cost $400 an hour." I can't really tell you how long it's gonna take, but, it could be $4,000, could be $12,000, right? People don't want
Yeah.
that sort of, range or, unpredictability when it comes to pricing.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm totally with you. We've seen that a lot too. I switched over to almost entirely flat rate for probate, and it's been a dramatic decline in complaints because it's like every month you'd send out invoices and you'd get at least a handful of people sending an email back. It's like, I thought it was going to be X, but now it's Y, and it's like, well, I told you it'd be in this range because people conveniently forget. Like if it has anything to do with
Oh,
fees,
yeah.
they like conveniently forget what you told them on the phone and don't care what the agreement says and all that. So you got to be, tender with it. Um, but yeah, it's really interesting. If I'm responding to the Missouri bar, for example, on like the ethics of the fee, like to me, like the reasonableness of the fee is all about, um, what's the value that you're providing? Like if you're providing a higher quality service because it's more efficient and you're solving their problem more quickly, like can you make an argument there that our value is higher, so it's a more reasonable fee? Even though I'm spending less time, the value that the client is receiving is better. So I mean,
100%.
yeah, yeah,
I mean, and that's what differentiates law firms in the legal space. I mean, 100%. Does when somebody's looking for a probate lawyer in St. Louis, right? Um, Maybe they see my face. They probably do, on various platforms, and they probably see an ad from you as well, right? So when they are choosing a lawyer, and then maybe 10 other lawyers, let's say, right? But when they're choosing a lawyer to do their job, right? Do they want somebody who's going to be incentivized to take a longer amount of time, or do they want somebody who has systems, processes that are in place that make the client experience state of the art, really easy to do everything in their firm? And all these things take money too. I mean, creating systems and a client experience costs a lot of money, right?
yeah,
And so I think that the argument is a very reasonable and simple argument of, we provide a high value service here, and that, our fees are completely reasonable, right? They're not, I mean, we're not outside the park, when it comes to, fees. We're very reasonable, but we're not charging to, $150 an hour. That we're going to work on your case for your small estate affidavit for 10 months, right? And half of the lawyers out there in St. Louis are probably doing that, right? Maybe not the hour 150, but they're taking 3 times as long as probably we are, producing results in cases, right? So, I think that's definitely the value based is a big component of reasonableness. And
yeah.
I think the courts recognize that, especially when you introduce technology. I think that they're going to be very, receptive to that sort of approach.
Yeah, I don't know if you've read it, but I would encourage you to take a look at that. It's the informal advisory opinion from the Missouri Bar, April of 2024. it's a lot more reasonable and measured than I was kind of expecting. It was a lot more hands off and a lot more like, hey, we're leaving it up to you to make your own judgments about these are the things you should be looking out for. Like when you're looking at a platform, like are you still exercising competence and supervision, like, or are you just like printing out content and then like handing it to the court? Like that's obviously not cool. And they talk about like check out the local court rules. Some judges have issued orders where they're like, don't just be giving us crap. Like, don't be citing fake cases. Come on,
Yeah.
use a little judgment here. But other than that, they were very, very, I think, flexible and open to the uses in these areas, and I think that's a green light, at least in Missouri, to for people to continue exploring and integrating and pushing the boundaries wherever they can. But so one last thing I want to talk about in other tech news that's more on the kind of physical side than in the digital and automation side is do you think people will ever be comfortable with and I guess we'll find out, but ever be comfortable with we do a lot of remote representation, virtual representation. But Elon Musk, a couple of like last week, announced and he showed it off at their conference and all that, their new humanoid robot. That if you've like watched the Will Smith movie I, Robot, like we're there now. Like the bot,
Yeah.
like I don't know if you've seen the videos, like it's up and walking around, it talks, it sounds like a real person, it can engage in conversation. At his event, it was serving drinks to the guests. They have a bunch of them out there, like a fleet of them just serving drinks and walking around and making small talk. There's all these videos now going around of people like having small talk with these robots. Do we put these in law firms? Do we put them at the front desk? Like what does this look like?
Oh man, that's an interesting topic choice. Yeah, I mean, one, I think it's super cool. I think Elon's just always just pushing the boundaries on everything, right? That's what he wants to do is like work. How far can we push this? Let's develop a robot that acts like a human. All right, very cool. But again, let's go back to actual use cases, right?
Yeah.
And functionality. Do I want would I want would I buy that humanoid robot to make myself drinks in my house? No, because I actually enjoy sitting down and, and making a nice Manhattan or old fashioned or, taking the time to, handcraft it, right? I
Yeah.
mean, and when it comes to, I mean, law firms, um, I think that, I mean, law firms are so slow when it comes to adopting technology in the first place. I
Yeah.
mean, just overall, I mean, there's still, I mean, Dan, you probably run into this a lot, but I mean, I would say at least 50% of the law firm owners in St. Louis, 50%, okay, of all ages and ranges of everything, right? Just 50% are probably still stuck in the Stone Age when it comes to they may not even have a CRM, right?
Mm.
Or they may have a very, very basic CRM, or they're probably their tech integration is and maybe because they're you know older when it comes to as a law firm owner and they've done the same thing, they're still using paper files, the same thing their entire career. Why change now, type thing, right? But um, we're just really slow as a profession to integrate technology and change,
Yeah.
right? And so I think that, the younger lawyers that are coming up and, graduating law school and like they're getting bombarded with all this really great tech and they're probably more likely to introduce tech starting their law firms. And I think that we're seeing that. But I still think that it's going to take some time for us to get used to the law firm profession to, really trust the technology when it comes to producing good results
Yeah.
and being able to lean in on it. And I think that we're still 10 years behind, at least having almost every law firm use some sort of AI function, probably 10 years
Yeah.
for everybody's using AI in some capacity, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's probably true. And somebody in the guild posted something about putting like a iPad or something at the front desk where you could like tap and it would call to the relevant team member, and they were apparently experiencing good results with it. But I don't know. In the advertising sales video, the bot can apparently like do dishes and laundry. So if that's all it can do, like, That's, I think, enough for me. So
Yeah, like $40,000 for a robot to do your dishes. I mean, it's worth it for sure. I
yeah,
mean,
for the rest of your well, I don't know how long they last. I don't know what the life cycle is, but, yeah, it's something like $30,000, $40,000, which, is, a lot less than you'd expect if they could get the price point down that low, but,
those dishes though.
yeah,
Yeah.
those dishes.
Especially when you got 4 kids. I only have 2. So,
Yeah,
I have half as many dishes as you do.
well, yeah, there's quite a few, that's for sure. Um, all right, well, we're coming up on time. Why don't we, wrap it up for the week? Um, any tip or, any tip of the week for anybody for this week?
Yeah, yeah. So I'm gonna go with something that I mentioned before, profitability and scalability when it comes to, having that specific lens on tech, right? There's so many cool, tech items out there right now. I mean, I love the ability the voice bots, right, when it comes to answering your phones that you had demoed. Was it Vappy, I think you talked about before?
Yeah, yeah,
That was super cool. I mean, something I'd love to introduce to my law firm. But I think that whenever you're looking at, should I add a new piece of tech or change my current tech stack, right? I think it has to be viewed in the eyes of, will this increase profitability or scalability, right? And I think that because here's the deal. I mean, I love all the tech stuff. I would love to sit around and just play with tech stuff all day long on my computer, and these different things that you could think like, oh, this is going to be a game changer. Like every little shiny new object is a game changer for your law firm, the way they sell it to you, right?
yeah,
This could change everything. And at the end of the day, it may change nothing. Okay. So, I'm sitting on, Maximum Lawyer, Lawyer on the Beach, these different forums where all these lawyers are talking about really cool tech stuff, right? And I see people on there that are like, "Oh, I think I should change my CRM. Like, I need to go over to here." And then all they do is trade their current problems for a new set of problems, right? That work differently, right?
yeah,
And in their mind, they're making this big game changing change, right? But I've learned over the years to view, to view my tech stack of in profitability and scalability. Is this something I need to do to be able to scale? And this is something I need to do now too. Can I do
yeah,
this? Like, do I need to do a Vappy voice bot right now? The
yeah,
answer is no. I don't need it right now. Once I'm done with my current, I would say do one tech project at a time. And once that's completed, then you can, look into the next piece and say, okay, is this something I need for scalability or profitability, and kind of go from there. But
yeah,
it's to eliminate the shiny object syndrome and to get you not down rabbit holes where you're spending money where you don't need to in your firm.
yeah. It is so hard. And I struggled with this in the first several years of like knowing the difference between, what's a shiny object and what's a genuine, value add. Uh, and sometimes the answer is not obvious, and it takes, for me at least, it took a lot of time of playing around and learning what was out there and talking to lots of people and listening to podcasts and kind of getting my head around the landscape. But I'm totally with you. Be more careful about, what you're integrating, and, be mindful, because it can be tricky, to know when you're helping or distracting yourself.
Yep.
Um, my tip would be, a simple one. I'm going to do a simple one this week. If you're a Google Workspace user, um, make sure that you have your Google Drive desktop sync downloaded on your computer. I see so many posts all the time on Facebook groups where like people are like, oh, you know, I got to download these documents from Google and upload them. And no, you don't. Just download the Google Drive Desktop Sync application on your computer, and anything that you have stored in Google Drive Cloud will automatically be synced to your desktop. So if you open up the pleading you were working on from your desktop and hit save, it saves back to the cloud instantly, and you don't have to upload anything. You don't have to download anything. It's just integrated. It's all right there. It's connected to you on your local machine. So check it out if you're a Google Drive, and same goes for Microsoft. They have their OneDrive desktop thing. If you're a MS365 firm, check it out. Check it out. Clean it up. All right, guys, that's it for this week. If you enjoy the podcast, Leave us a 5-star review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcast. If you're interested in continuing the conversation, let's take it offline in the Legal Tech Collective Facebook group, where we have conversations like this every day. And that's it for this week. I appreciate it, guys. Thank you, John. Pleasure as always.
Yep. Thanks, Dan. See you next week. Have a great weekend.
You as well. Take it easy.